Switch it on. Good evening. I will now call the January 27th meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce our participants this evening. Vice Chair Amy Tatum, Directors Keena Chadwick, Jen Lynch, and Shirley Olson. Also, I have Superintendent Dr. Stephen Cook. Deputy Superintendent Lisa Burke is not with us this evening, and Board Clerk Janet Bojanowski. Director Ross Tomlin is joining us virtually, and I'm Marcus Grand, Chair of the Board. Will you please stand, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move to agenda item number 3, a view of the agenda. Dr. Cook, are any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda. However, since we originally posted the agenda, we had to upload a changed copy of the Resolution 2007 that impacts bullet item number 7.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Fellow board members, is there any changes to the agenda? All right. Hearing no request for changes, we will proceed with the agenda as noticed. But we do have some action items that we need to take care of before we go into the things that we're going to be doing tonight in our work session. And let's get started with those, please. And we actually worked on this in executive session before our work session. And like I said, early in the afternoon, the Board of Directors met in executive session under ORS 192.660 2B and 2F and had the opportunity to deliberate on the information presented. I will now entertain a motion.
I move to uphold the superintendent's notice of proposed discipline dated January 15th, 2026. This decision is made without regard to the additional complaints on page 6 of that notice, as those additional complaints have not been investigated and therefore have not been substantiated.
Thank you, Director Tatum. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
It has been motioned by Director Tatum and second by Director Olson. Most definitely. There any discussion on the proposed motion? All right, hearing no discussion, we have to call a roll call vote, and I'm going to go one at a time. Director Tatum?
Aye.
Director Tomlin?
Aye.
Director Lynch?
Aye.
Director Chadwick?
Aye.
Director Olson?
Aye.
And myself, Chair LeGrand, and it's an aye as well. It is unanimous aye. I don't think we had any abstentions or objections. All right, thank you all for that action. And now we will hear from Paul Dean, Chief Operating Officer regarding Resolution 2007. Thank you, Paul, for being here today.
Thank you for having me, directors. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve Resolution 2007, which is a surplus property exchange of modular classrooms. Ben Lapine has been engaged in conversations with Heart of Oregon. Heart of Oregon has 2 modulars sitting at the campus of Bend Tech Academy. Bend Lapine Schools has determined that there are surplus modulars, one at Buckingham Elementary and one at Lapine Middle School, and we would like to propose an exchange of those modular classrooms with the Heart of Oregon. Happy to take any questions, otherwise.
Yes, directors, you have any questions for Mr. Dean? All right, I'm hearing any discussion. All right, now we'll entertain a motion to accept Resolution 2007.
I move to accept Resolution 2007, approving the exchange of the district property for the nonprofit property as presented.
Thank you, Director Tatum. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Lynch. It has been motioned by Director Tatum, second by Director Lynch. Any discussions on the proposed motion? All right, hearing no discussion, I would now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Dean. We will now move into our work session portion of this meeting. During tonight's meeting, the board will continue its work on reviewing the executive limitations at the October work session. We review all executive limitations up to 4.2. So this evening, we will start with 4.3.
Thank you, directors. I just want to start by kicking off. This may feel a little tedious, but I want you to know that this does matter. It sets kind of the playing field, if you will, of the work of the superintendent and i.e. therefore the team on what are kind of the boundaries of our administrative operational maneuverings and where those are going to live. And so the way that we've chosen, the district has chosen to embrace this is categorically. And so we did 4.1, which was policies, 4.2, we did HR, and we even have one additional update I think that we're going to propose for your approval when we bring those back that we want to add because we did find something after our last meeting that we think would be meaningful. And so what we would like to ask you to consider is today starting with EL 4.3, and if we can get to it, and I'm pretty confident, some of these are pretty straightforward, to get all the way through EL 4.9 and get those modifications. And then assuming that we could get to that point, we would bring back copies of the drafts and bring them back for your consideration at our very next, our next work session is the budget meeting.
They will probably come back through actual board packet in March.
Okay, yeah. So instead of work session, we'll bring those back to you in the March board meeting. That'll give us a little bit of time to do the changes, recommended changes, and then we can push those out for your review. And then if we want to set those out for public comment or public review, we can do that as well. So I think unless you have questions, it's time to dive in on 4.3.
Director, is there any questions about 4.3 that we need to look at? Because I know we received some of these beforehand. Yes.
I had a few, not questions, but thoughts.
Got it.
Just to sort of kick it off and open to discussion, obviously. I would like to see in the first section under financial planning, a projection of revenues and expenditures. In my original comments, I put 3 years. I know like we're still working on the systems that would enable financial projections, but I would like to see something explicit that says we project forward our revenues and expenditures, maybe through the end of our bargaining agreements or maybe through a reasonable amount of time. But something, when we get into budget time, we are not just looking at the subsequent budget year, but able to look into the future. Yeah, that's my first one. My second one, it made me a little uncomfortable that there was no explicit purchasing limit, like kind of in the EL. Obviously, we have them, but I thought it was weird that it didn't show up here at all. There was no reference back to our financial policies, so I added, the superintendent shall not exceed purchasing limits as specified in district policy without express approval of the board of directors. Like, that's a really typical thing that's in board policies, and it gives us the flexibility, of course, to change those in a different way. And then I added one that I don't think everyone is going to completely love, but please take this with the intent, the spirit of the intent here. Accordingly, the superintendent shall not fail to continuously monitor and report on the educational outcomes of expenditures. We do a lot of reporting on how much money we spend, and we don't do a lot of reporting on like what we get for it. And again, maybe it's aspirational, like maybe this is something we work towards, but part of the financial health of the district, to me, includes educational outcomes, as described in our sort of our board ends, which are a strong academic foundation, purpose plan for the future. We have wellness, inclusion, and belonging, and like it to me feels those to me, adherence to those board ends feels like part of financial health. So that's my stuff to put out there.
Can I respond? I'm curious what folks think about like what would be the opposite side of the coin with the recommendation that Jen just put forward in terms of like, what that would look like? I'm curious what people are thinking.
If we don't do it,
No, if we do it, what would be the downfall of, what would be the cons of doing something like that?
Can I suggest, each one of those is its own discrete conversations. I think I would like to take those, if the board is engaged with this and would like to know more, I would like to speak to, like, let's start with number one, because I would agree that I agree with Jen's position that it makes sense to talk about projections. But I think where we put it in this document matters, because I would tell you that projections aren't necessarily a budget tool. They're an financial administrative tool that we could use then to also inform how we budget. And so I would suggest that it lives in financial planning or perhaps financial administration, but I wouldn't put it necessarily in accordingly, this superintendent shall not fail to present to the board of directors a recommended budget, which has 7 and now perhaps an 8th item. I would say projections is an important thing this district has not chosen to engage in, that I think is a very meaningful thing. And there would be no threat to the system, but I also would suggest that it's important to be clear what that looks like, because we can do pretty accurate projections for a biennia. After a biennia, now we have to build in lots and lots of assumptions that we would then need to communicate what those assumptions are to be able to have meaningful tools for your all's consideration.
Yeah, I guess, so the part of the reason why I put it under budget is because budget is a public document. Budget is something that gets discussed in a group, and I feel this is important context for those two things as opposed to an internal document. And the second, on the timing, I totally agree with you. I think between collective bargaining agreements and the state's direction based on the biennia, like those are sort of things that give us some guardrails, like here's about reasonably what we can see into the future. And I put 3 years in there, I don't know, like maybe it's like 2 or, but I think that there's a reason why it's in there, and not just sort of like, oh, you can throw it in the annual financial report, or maybe you email it to us. But to me, it is part of the public process of running a budget conversation, is those forward projections. And I guess the question is, like, do you think you can make them part of the budget conversation without adding it as number 8 here?
The answer is yes, and I think there is a couple of pieces that I would say. It's depending on remember the biennia is year 1, we're chasing because the long session is typically running, we don't have answers until May, and so we're chasing dates. The second year of the biennia, barring cuts or anything like that, very predictable, very easy to do projections off of. It's also a lot easier to build the budget off of the second year. So when we're in year 1 or we're in year 2, anything that would be projection related would also impact. So there is I would say it relates mostly to biennia relationship rather than if we write this as 3 years, that's 2 completely different work products, whether we're in year 1 or we're in year 2. And so maybe we write it in a way that is related to the current biennia and the next anticipated biennia, for one. And then secondly, I understand what your desire is, and I think if it is about making this more of a public-facing document, so that then I would still I could live in that location, but I would still recommend that we separate that, for example, as accordingly the superintendent shall not fail to, in the first section of the financial planning, and then have a second section in financial planning that is additionally, the budget shall also include at least the current year's projections and the anticipated future projections for the next biennium, or something like that. So that's language for you all to figure out what you want, but I see where you're going. We would not be opposed to the idea of having that being forward-facing. In fact, that would help with lots of decision-making when people see for example, our fund balance getting to the point where we're no longer going to be able to meet district policy. Those kinds of documents being in our constituents' hands will help us with making some of those conversations a little more public.
So you're saying make it a subset of one of the other, in one of the other pieces versus actually adding an eighth one? Or are you saying it's have a total different section altogether?
I would say, thank you for that question. I would say, don't make it an eighth. I would say, keep these 7 as a part of making the budget that is, and then have a second section that says accordingly, or additionally, the superintendent shall also include through the budget process that still lives in financial planning, if that's the location the board would be interested in keeping it so that it has that forward-facing, kind of community-facing access.
Directors, do you have any questions about the first question? Because like I said, we're going to tackle these one at a time because I think it'd be easier for us to understand. So directors, do you have any questions about the first part that he's talking about Director Lynch's question as well? Or recommendation, excuse me.
Or suggested language.
Yeah, suggested language, excuse me.
Yeah, I think from the current year too. I think it's important to state that from the current year into the next biennium, as opposed to 3 years, because that is, it gets really weird when you're in the first year of a biennium and then you're looking 3 years down the road. It's also restrictive, so I think into the next biennium makes a little more sense.
The terms of the bargaining agreements we sign do
Yeah.
tend to be across multiple biennia.
Yeah.
Like they do, we create financial obligations that stretch across
Oh, yeah.
those sessions, and therefore, like, just having a full, conversation about that forward-looking obligation that's my purpose of all of this.
I do want to qualify. We have, and our unions have been reluctant to do financials beyond the current biennia because of that very reason, because we don't know. And I think, I don't want to speak for the unions, but I would posit that the unions would suggest that there is an interest in knowing what the financial conditions are before agreeing to anything. And so since I've been here, we have not stepped beyond biennia we have agreed to go a 4-year agreement, for example, with financial reopeners before the next biennia. And so I do like the idea of speaking through biennia for projections, because that's the tool of projections. And the benefit from that would be a broader understanding of what we are anticipating over the next 3 to 5 years.
All right, Director Tomlin, you have anything?
No, I think that's a great idea, as long as we keep it within the biennia, yeah.
Okay. Second piece or second question or second language that.
Can we get language around that first? I would really like to have
Okay.
some recommendations from you all on what you want that to look like.
I mean, would you put it underneath our number 3 in terms of like public facing and reasonably understandable?
I think he's saying he wants it to like not even be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it's like another sentence.
Or would it be another section?
Additionally,
Yeah.
the superintendent shall not fail to provide forward-looking revenue and expenditure
I see.
projections. And then you have like all kinds of latitude about what's, and then the next time we talk about this, we can be like, okay, fine, 2 years, whatever. I guess I'm reluctant about putting something in there like 2 years or, does that make sense? Like a new sentence?
But we do operate on bienniums
We
when
do.
it comes to,
But if we put 2 years and it's like we're stretching across them like in every other year and like we do, and again.
but this is the
4-year
problem with
bargaining
school
agreements, like, all
funding.
of it, the years are gonna be-
Yes, cool.
Yeah.
For that reason. Right. I like the addition piece. I think we can do that. I think, is it almost like an asterisk to a certain extent?
I don't think so. I think what you're asking for is a new communication tool. And I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, Director Lynch, but I believe that what you're seeking is having this communication between administration and the board be in a public-facing document, so it's available to all, that also demonstrates the kind of the financial lay of the land of the district. And so it would be a new piece to the budget book. It would it would be some form of a new communication with our constituency. And so that's for those reasons, but it is 100% under financial planning. That's why I believe it should live separately. But that doesn't mean that we would be precluded from putting it in budget book. That's very easy for us to do.
Director Lynch, besides the language that you already crafted, is there any other like tweaks or something to the language or something that you are thinking? Because I have an idea, but go ahead.
No, I feel like we're headed in the right direction.
Okay.
Want to add something?
Yes, for me, what I'm hearing is it's like you saying like in number 7, you say in addition, the superintendent and his team should have a biennium projection for us to be able to review, to be able, like, I don't want to go that wordy, but you know what I'm saying? I think something along those lines. And I think Janet normally has a really good job of wordsmithing things. And you can get it back to us and we can take a look. Is that fine?
I think what I hear you saying is something that extends into a future biennia, so that we are actually projecting what our financial status looks like, not just what's already known and being administered by the state school fund.
Thank you.
Okay,
Great.
All right, to the second one?
thank you.
The second one was that explicit, the superintendent shall not exceed purchasing limits as specified in district policy without express approval of the board of directors. This is like one where I think maybe if we had the real policy in front of us that this refers back to, it might make this easier to talk about.
Director Lynch. Sorry, I shut it off instead of on. The first part of financial planning says that shall not deviate material from the board ends and policies. So do we explicitly need to call out a specific policy that we're telling the superintendent not to deviate from? That's just my wondering if we're just adding something that is already explicitly in this document.
I can answer that question. Right now, we have purchasing authority limits that exist in policy DJC-AR. And there is no limit on the superintendent, the chief financial officer, except for anything that would live in executive limitations. And currently, there is no financial limitation that exists in the ELs. And there's a $100,000 limitation for the CFO. And so those that by policy, that's it. And then like for district staff, $500, culinary and coaches, $1,500. It just works its way up depending on what your purchasing needs would be. And I would tell you that that superintendents would argue that in real time, this is in the best interest of the district to keep that operational fluid kind of ability. And I think what I would recommend, if that's an interest, is perhaps asking us to do, for example, report annually or quarterly on times in which the district has made purchases exceeding X amount of dollars or something like that, and see if if any of those kinds of purchases are being done in a way that the board would not be so inclined to support. And if so, then perhaps you put some limitations on the EL. I've lived with as tight as $50,000 for a superintendent.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Your board book gets much bigger. I mean, hundreds of pages bigger if we get tight on this, so.
Yeah, and the number that I saw most often in looking at our peer districts in Oregon was $500,000.
Yeah.
And it was often expressed as a report, like that would be another way to do this. It's just like once a year, when you do your EL 4.3 report, you show us the things that cost more than, it could be $1 million, it could be $500,000. It could be some amount of money, but I will say I did see an actual number in there, even for superintendent purchasing authority over and over and over again. And again, the intent not to be create friction, the intent to be create transparency.
There is a similar statement in the facilities EL that has to do with 300,000 and 100,000.
Yep, it goes back here. Yeah.
I don't know if that it should be viewed in relation to the general superintendent's restrictions.
What I would, bring attention to in the facilities are, those are change orders. And so when we talk about approved construction plans or modification plans, effectively what you're authorizing administration to do is to go out and, for example, build a bend high, redesign and build it on the same site. And that, you've $150 million or something like that. However, if a change order were to come in which we would exceed $300,000 total cost, I can't do that without board agreement on that, or at least board notification, I believe. And so I would tell you that that's substantially different than reporting out expenditures. But I'm also not opposed to the idea of, we do transfers, we do bond, we finance our bonds, we do all kinds of things. And so part of what I would want us to do is to make sure what those areas are that you're interested in setting parameters around, that it's to the benefit of the community knowing that and not just putting unnecessary barriers in front of the operations of the district.
Any other additional comments or questions from the directors on this piece?
I mean, I think like this is just gonna be one where we should, before we like move on, we need to decide, like, do we want to report like that specified in the EL, or are we feeling like, you know, maybe there's another way that we can get that information? Again, like the concept of a over $500,000 board notification, like that's one that, you know, that does tend to show up. I think that's what Beaverton does. And you're right, I think it could be written in such a way, like implemented in such a way that like removes things like that are just purely transfers. Yes, bookkeeping, and with the intent being purchases, right? The intent being purchases, explicit purchases.
So would you want it to say like the board will be notified of any new expenditures over $500,000? Like, is that the ask?
No, I'm not sure we want to go that far right now. It's more that, like, we already have a process, well, I think we have a process by which the superintendent reports on the ELs every year, right? So we already have a framework, and so when it comes time to 4.3, like, what sorts of things would we like to see? You know, and we don't, what we have is quarterly financial reports and present the audit, you know, and this would be like another thing, right? Which is like maybe it's an annual large purchase report or something. Yeah.
Can I suggest, I think a way that we could dip our toe in this is many of the purchases that are over $500,000, you've already approved, right? Like that's curriculum, things like that, big purchases. What if we try to include, when we write the 4.3 report, any purchases over $500,000 not otherwise already approved by the board?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
That's what I was thinking too, is you already tell us a lot of those things. You would give us a heads up and say, hey, this is coming down the pike, this is happening, you know, so I understand. Which just gives us another way to be able to look at, hey, this is what you did over the year. Okay, what did these hit, just in case this is a good refresher almost. Right. Okay, and your third language?
Right, so the third one is the most aspirational, which is what can we do when talking about financial health that ties this work back to the board ends. Strong academic foundation, plan for students. So the way I wrote this was, you know, continuously monitor and report on the educational outcomes of expenditures. It's a big ask, and we don't have like a framework, or we have not provided a framework for such a report. And so maybe there's some sort of like half step that's like monitor the educational outcomes of expenditures, and we work towards reporting. But this, you know, the spirit being that keeping the district in the black is element of financial health. Outcomes is another element of financial health.
So like investing in new curriculum and then wanting to make sure that the curriculum is actually giving us a return on that investment in terms of test scores, outcomes.
That could be one. I mean, you know, we make major expenditures on personal development. We make major expenditures on training. Like there are all sort of things that could be, of course, the biggest, you know, is our teaching pool and our, like all of this is expenditures and, you know, discussing how those are impacting educational outcomes would be the goal, the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems hard to measure.
How do you rein it in? That's, yeah.
My thing is like, almost like you're saying an expenditure report card. Yeah, that's, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Let me take a run at this. We have a little bit of guidance on this already. This is PBAM, right?
Right.
Like this is what the state is hoping to determine. At some point in time, the state is going to say, in your cohort group of school districts, we think you should be scoring X. You're funded at this level. The reason you're in this cohort is because your demographics are similar, your economics are similar, your district kind of deliverables are similar. And so we believe that those of you should be producing similar outcomes. This is, the term for what we're talking about is called performance-based budgeting. This is absolutely something that I agree we should aspire to. Performance-based budgeting requires systems that we are currently working on. So we're talking about the cost of a teacher at a school, the cost of curriculum implemented at a school. Like the closest example I could tell you is, for example, the Wayfinder curriculum that we've implemented to impact student kind of wellness in our schools. After we're in year 2 of this, I think, year 3, I've lost track. I don't know.
3.
I'm way too old to be tracking years now.
It's 3, yeah.
That we should see some outcomes. Like, for example, in our youth truth data, we should see improvement based upon students' experience in their respective schools, and schools that are reporting a better implementation of the kind of the Wayfinder material, which means we would have to measure that in a particular way, which we don't currently have a way to do that, but theoretically that could be done. The places where, like, let's say you're at A level of implementation versus a C level of implementation, you would want to see some higher amount of student satisfaction on the youth truth scores, or some amount of growth on those youth truth scores. And I think what I would suggest is performance-based, any of that is a job of a board, is a job of administration to justify or de-implement something that we do not feel like is being meaningful or having that impact. And I would tell you that it's not the wrong conversation to have. I would tell you that right now we're in the systems work. We've got a lot of systems implement. Like, we would have to calculate all of that by hand right now, which is staffing wise, we wouldn't be able to do that. But once we get the systems in place, that's the kind of thing that we would like to engage in.
So are you basically saying having a standard-based grading approach to our expenditures?
I am not. But that's a great comparison. What I am saying is that we are trying to build the systems that allow us to say, for example, let's pick Pine Ridge Elementary. We've got X amount of dollars of resources going into Pine Ridge, and here are the students that are in that school, here's their outcomes, and that somehow between those resources, those students, and these are the goals that the district has set are important, that the organizational goals, this is how it's being performed at that level. And I think the best place to start with that would be, like, what is, for example, here's all the expenditures that we're pushing into right now, district-wide, forget the school. Eventually, we could get to the school. We're not anywhere close to that. Here are the systems that we're building for Ben Lapine schools, and here are our current outcomes. And the current outcomes would live, for example, like on a website as here's our, what do we call it, like a data dashboard, for example. These are the outcomes that we've determined as a community matter for student performance, and what we are investing our state school fund dollars, and/or if we ever do go out and ask our community for a levy, what their dollars are purchasing on the backside. And it's a very meaningful and important discussion, and I agree with it conceptually, but this is a conversation that we've been having now since I've been here, which is we can get there, but the systems work is so, we have to catch the systems up before we can get to that point, so.
I can't resist. I have a dissertation that you might want to read about how basic school finance is tied to elementary school outcomes.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. It's almost impossible at the secondary level.
Yeah.
The elementary level, you can capture because you can capture it by classroom.
Yeah.
Right.
At the middle school and secondary level, you've got, every kid in 6 or 7 different experiences, if you will, and it's very difficult to capture. But that was my dissertation.
So you're saying it's doable at
I'm
elementary
saying
level?
it is doable, but it's difficult. But it is doable at the elementary level, and nobody's captured the secondary level, how that would qualify.
And might I add, things like blends and this school has an extra administrator, or this school has an extra SSC because of behaviors, or every one of those things will have an impact. And trying to core it down without the infrastructure in place is almost impossible. And so, for example, having a system in which we say we are spending $178 million every year on delivering on our organizational goals, and for that we're getting these outcomes. We could do that this year. That is something we could do, put it up on a website and say, these are what those dollars are purchasing. Now, when we get to, should we use this program, or is our Title I interventionists more effective than those interventionists that are not at Title I schools, but we are funding in another means? Now you've got factors involved, like, well, what's the demographic of that school community? What were their starting points? And so it does get very challenging very quickly, but this is, oh my God, I can't think of his name. The guy who studied the effect size of almost every single thing in education. Oh my goodness, this is gonna hit me at like 2 a.m. I bet Lisa'd know if she were here. Things like the impact of a quality educator, things like the impact of a great leader, things like impact of 4-day school week versus 5-day school week. The effect size has been measured on all of this stuff, and that's what we're trying to determine. What's the best place to invest your dollars?
And is that something different than what Representative Croft was asking for when we all met?
Kinsey's watching. Kinsey said Hattie. Thank you, Kinsey. That is the exact name. John Hattie is the one I'm trying to think of. Effect size on everything. And so the question, I'm sorry, Keena, repeat your question.
I was saying, was that the same, is that the detail that Representative Croft was asking for?
Conceptually, it's very similar to
Yeah.
that, yeah. The statewide, I don't want to over ascribe credit, but the state saying we need to do PBAM is them saying, like we've been saying, we have to figure out position control so that none of this would be possible. Position control gives you your denominator, right? Like knowing where we're putting our money. Like we can tell you now that we're putting more money into smaller schools per student because of enrollment size, and we're putting less money into our larger schools because of economy of scales. High schools cost more money because they're so comprehensive. You've got to have, whether you have 12 kids in calculus or 27, you got to have a calculus class, things like that. And so it's much more challenging to do this in a way. It doesn't mean we're afraid of this. I think what we need is what is a reasonable starting place to put outcome expectations on a financial executive limitation.
I wonder too if it's like gonna take understanding, like getting final rule adoption for Senate Bill 141 in place.
Right.
Because it does a very good job of being like, this is what the state considers to be educational outcomes. Like we don't have to like make them up. they've given us a list. There's 10 of them. Let's just do those, right? We don't have to like make this harder, and you're gonna have to do some of this for them anyway. And I imagine that where they are going, you know, is an attempt to do exactly this, tie curriculum and personnel and support expenditures directly to something like third grade reading proficiency. Like the train is gonna be running in that direction. And I think, yeah, so anyway, what if the change to the EL was like, just monitor educational outcomes for expenditures? Is that still too much?
Or can we be a little bit more deliberate in relations to what current state mandates? Was that too far? But I was gonna say, can EKG do this? I'm kidding, I was joking.
I think if we were to, let's take a run at some language here. I'm going to do my best. Monitor spending in accordance with state reporting requirements on accountability measures, and report on those annually would be a starting place for us. I think that counts for two things. That is a way for us to annually say, we've provided this much resource for this many kids to meet these data.
They put in some reporting requirements in this thing, and some of them are
Are you
like,
on Senate Bill 141? Is that what
yeah,
you're-
Yeah, they
like
did. They
you
put a
need to
lot.
present this to your school board.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if I just spend a few minutes doing a find in this thing, I'm gonna find out that actually you probably have to do it.
And then
Already.
you want to incorporate it
141.
here?
I'm looking at it now. It's like 40 pages long.
But the line that Steve just
Yeah.
said,
I think is
Would
kind
fit
of
it-
in here.
yeah,
I think it's in 141.
yeah.
Basically
but
what you just
Just
said.
saying that like these
Yeah.
outcomes will be measured per state requirements.
Yeah.
It's going to be there
And
anyways.
monitoring expenditures in line.
Yeah.
Do you want to review that while we're sitting here, and we can go to 4.4, and then we can go from there, unless there's additional stuff that people want to talk about with 4.3? We can come back, because I want to move us forward.
I guess
Or you
the
can
only reason
send-
I'm like kind of like hesitant is that this like 141 hasn't been fully
Right,
you know, it's like gotta go
Exactly.
through DOJ, like there's still a lot of work to get it across the line. And so I don't wanna like tie what we put into our ELs like too closely to it, but, yeah.
okay. You want to be able to send that to maybe Janet, and then we can,
And even, we will take a run at a sentence. I think we can get at least something that brings finances and accountability or outcomes into the same paragraph.
Would it not come under that last would it not come under that last paragraph of additionally, the superintendent shall not fail to provide financial reports, keep complete and accurate records, monitor and blah, blah, blah. Yep. Yeah, good.
cool, I like that. Okay. Yes,
Thank
Ross. Ross unmuted, so, yes, sir.
No, I hate to bring up anything else on 4.3, but just a couple of quick things.
All right, go for it.
Well, last time in October, we had talked about changing the board ends to organizational goals. I just wanted to bring us back to that and say, I think we were gonna make that change in all the documents. Is that? still the
And
case?
Janet said she's working on that piece,
Okay.
okay? And what was the
And
second
then
thing?
And then the other thing was, it mentions in point number 2, it's completed with input from the budget committee. So I'm just curious that, is that all we need is input from the budget committee? And then we can move forward and pass a budget at the board level? What if the budget committee had issues with the budget and didn't want to approve it? Because don't they typically every year approve the budget to move forward to the full board?
Yeah, so let's start with talking about Budget Committee. And Budget Committee is you all and the members that, of the general public that are participating as members of the Budget Committee. And so the idea that the Budget Committee gets to say how we're spending our money is not the intent of the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee gets to provide input, and as members of that, and the board serves as members of that Budget Committee, it is captured in statute and a lot of different places, I believe, that is a Oregon rule of impact that the Budget Committee will have the ability to provide input. That being said, I couldn't speak to places where the Budget Committee, or what we think of as the Budget Committee, the folks that are not on the board that are a part of the Budget Committee, where they're holding up a board approving the overall budget for any school district in the state. The process is to allow public access through the Budget Committee to provide input. And so it's your responsibility, it's our responsibility for that Budget Committee to see and get feedback and to know what we're spending it on. And one of the things that we're excited to do, and I'll speak for Dan here, is to provide a more transparent view of how that process is being built and what's being done to ensure that the community knows. And part of our responsibility, we both agree on, is the role of the school district administration is to provide that in a very public setting so that there is a clear, transparent way in which we're administering how we intend to meet the goals, the organizational goals of the district. And doing that so that the public viewing of if somebody's watching the Budget Committee with you all, us presenting to them about what's being done and how we're spending our dollars, that meets the statutory obligation. And so then it's the board's determination on whether or not to accept the budget at that point. And that's probably the single most important thing the board does, quite frankly.
Thank you.
Hire a superintendent too, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional stuff for 4.3? All right, I guess it's time to move.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. 4.3, we knew 4.3 was going to have a lot of interest.
4.4?
So I just want to bring up the statement that's under number, let me go to it. Under number 4,
You good?
just seems a little confusing. It says the superintendent shall not fail to build new facilities without approval from the board of directors. And I know what it's trying to say, but it comes across as if it's okay for you to build new facilities without our approval. So I'm just thinking it might be better if we twisted that around and said, the superintendent shall not fail to obtain approval from the board of directors to build new facilities. It might just be a little clearer.
Mine says, receive approval from the Board of Directors to build or substantially renovate district facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. We need to get rid of the double negatives where we
Yeah.
can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure where this would fit in, but I think, in alignment with ODE's language, in terms of supporting gender expansive folks and trans youth, if a facility is being renovated, that is the ideal time to update restrooms if need be with single stalls, and to also include that type of language in, I don't know if it would be like building criteria, what have you, if a new district facility was being built.
There's two ways, so first of all, I agree with that concept. There's two ways that I think we could capture that. The first one is that we have building standards that are effectively our construction standards and the way they live in our facilities programming. Number one, that could live there. We could build that into that language. The second, and I think this is, that is subject to change of board, change of administration. That is something that is would be more easily modified by future members. I think if you want, but for that matter, so could ELs, right? Like a board could take away all the ELs. The second manner would be to include like a 4D and put some language in 4D that is capturing the values that we're trying to establish, that much in line with what I think you're sharing, is this idea that ODE's captured this language already in alignment with that language. But I think it would be wise for us to capture our own language and not reference, because if ODE changes their language, or if
Yeah.
somehow ODE gets, yeah, who knows what that would be, is to maybe we capture some of that language and incorporate that in. That would continue this build or renew facilities kind of, and I think we should be careful too, anytime that we would be building or renewing facilities in which bathrooms are going to be impacted.
Right.
Because we don't want to add a burden that wasn't intended to be happening. But if we are taking that on, that we should do that with a mindful approach.
Yeah, and I would, I mean, we can certainly play with the language, but encourage that, we do mention the, safety and health of all students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I had thought about adding just as in part 1, where we say district facilities are clean, safe, and adding inclusive and not subject to, just to kind of call out that spaces should be inclusive to all of our students and
Accessible.
constituents.
Yeah, and
Accessible and
accessible,
inclusive?
yes. I like the word accessible and inclusive, like
Yeah.
both are
Well,
really good.
so I guess the only argument that I would have is that I think at Caldera, like, there may be like 13 restrooms that are quote unquote accessible, but you have to like one of them, you have to like go through a gym and go through a weight room, and that is not accessible when you are running to different classes in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
Urban High, I don't remember where.
I'm a little reluctant on the word accessible, because accessible really has civil rights kind of
Totally.
connotation.
And that's
And
mostly what I
we're
mean.
governed by that
Yeah.
already,
Okay.
right? Like, we're making some modifications at one of our facilities because of a civil rights complaint that we have to, and it's regardless of what it says in the ELs, we're going to always be accountable to that. And so what I think we can capture the intent here with using, modeling some of the language that ODE has that speaks specifically to gender inclusive, non-gender inclusive. And so, do you have any concerns about that? I think I know exactly where to find it. Yeah, I think we could, give us a shot to take a run at this, and we'll get it to you guys.
Thank you.
Any additional stuff from 4.4? All right,
Just the
Sorry.
sustainability plan.
yes, thank you.
Just the question about the sustainability plan. I know we still are looking for a new director, correct?
Well, and the
Coordinator.
plan.
Coordinator. And an updated plan. And it's mentioned in several of these ELs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any additional information or comments on this? All right, thank you, directors. Let's go to 4.5.
On this one, I took out the sustainability plan. I recommended just removing that on number 2, partially because there's like 100 other reasons why we need operational safety and efficiency in our district vehicles. Like, there could be legal changes. There's obviously federal guidance on like how our buses are supposed to be fueled. Like, there's a lot of things. And I don't know, I guess I didn't feel like this aligning with the sustainability plan gave us enough flexibility to respond to the way that district vehicle requirements are changing over time, and they are. Yeah, so anyway, I was worried that one like was a little too constructive, something that's could be 5 years out of date, and may not sort of reflect what the best practice would be for bringing online new new vehicles and things.
I appreciate that. I can tell you that when this was written, I believe that there was a much stronger hope at the time that electric buses were going to become more ubiquitous.
I would
more
go back to natural gas buses
Right.
too. Everyone was positive, like we were going to do certain things, and those get written into plans, and then we've got this, this language.
There's a
that is-
feasibility
It's out of date. before it
challenge
gets
that
started. Yeah.
that is real. And I will tell you that if I would be supportive, our team would be supportive of the removal of that. And I will also add that item number, what is it, item 3, if you recall, a few years ago, we decided that choice schools mattered for all kids in this district and that we wanted to change our routing system. And we added, I think at the time, 12 routes that we now have that are, they call them MIT routes. And these MIT routes are to get kids all over this community to help provide access to choice options for students that otherwise would not have that choice. And I think that's an important capture in this. And I think it's important that you all know that because we have done that, it does come at a cost. There's only so much resource. And so if you recall, we spent several conversations over a period of probably 30 months talking with families who were irritated with us about their bus stop moving or it not being in their neighborhood now and they have to go out, or it's in a location that, but that was an active choice that lines up with right now what we believe are parts of our organizational goals and our vision. And so that lives under 3 in this. And so I would tell you that we do have an electric bus. We're proud of the electric bus, but right now we only have 1, and there's a reason. Those are challenging, and we have quite a few propane buses too. And so we're doing our best to diversify, and quite frankly, we're also trying to do our best to replace a bus once they get 10 years old and 300,000 miles on them to try to maintain a fleet that is constantly being recycled when you talk about 150 buses.
I'm curious if this is also a space where we should include language about providing transportation to students to school-based health centers.
Yeah.
It's already captured. It is a pilot. We're trying to pull this off this year, and so far it's going really well. Excuse me.
Okay.
I didn't expect to talk. We'll see how that goes. I think it's too early to tell. I mean, ultimately, what I would prefer to do is to have a school-based health center at every one of our schools, every one of our high schools, but that's not the case right now. And if we got the resources to do that, that would still be preferable. It helps eliminate barriers for kids and students that don't have those options. And so this is a for now solution. I think I don't anticipate any reasons why we wouldn't want to continue this, but if there's something that the board is so inclined to try to find a way to capture that in a policy, we can work on that as well.
I had a question about number 3, the phrase "and families." I wasn't sure what that is. Does that mean staff? What does that mean? If it's students, we mean students. We move students around. That's what our student transportation does. But we don't move families around in the absence of their students.
I think we're looking at prioritizing the needs of students and families. And so we're not moving families around, but this idea of for example, what do we call those seats when we have seats available that we can just pick up a kid that lives on the way but is less than the mileage? If there's just an open seat on a bus, courtesy seats. Sorry, I couldn't. Those, we want to prioritize the situations in which families that don't have the options of other transportation, if we have 1 seat available, we would choose a family that's, for example, doesn't have a car or something like that. And so those are the ways in which that plays out in real time.
Yeah, but I think to Jen's point, do we need to include families because the students are in need if the families are in
Student
need?
we're moving around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm-
I
that-
worry that it just to me sounded like we were providing bespoke family transportation, which is not, I don't believe was the intent of this sentence. And then it was do we mean staff? Because we don't, yeah, okay, but that's not what we mean at all. We just mean we're gonna move the
You don't think
students
so?
around. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think striking families makes sense because students are inclusive of families.
Okay.
Considering one of our current challenges of, where the bus stops, should it be stated that there is a process and a rubric to determine transportation routes and stops? Or is that too operational?
I think that's too operational. I think that could live in policy and standards, the way that we do it.
Okay.
And while I'm glad to have our team report on that. If you wanted to ask us to report on that as a part of this, be fine. But as far as remember, executive limitations are to set the parameters. And if there's something that you would like to know more about and have us report on that, then I would suggest that could be something as a request of the report should include, annual report on this is ways that we are accommodating our community, or that the ways that we're figuring out how we're going to choose those routes. We've got all kinds of algorithms that are running behind the scenes, and we wouldn't mind reporting on that at all.
So, and with this limitation also, I'm curious about like maintaining, you know, our transportation app. Like, would that be something under technology? Or would that potentially live somewhere here, but something about, I don't know, ensuring the quality of a functioning?
I would guess that is 4.7,
Okay.
item 1, which is like right now, going back to the conversation we started with, is making sure the systems exist so that we are supporting the goals of the district.
Yeah.
Having an app, you know, the fact that we now have an app that allows you to track where your kid is in real time, that's probably more technology than it is transportation, right?
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had thought the same thing, Keena, so I didn't know if it fit under technology or here, but mentioning something about the route technology, I think would be important somewhere.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like a couple more words in number 2, maintain a fleet of buses and other vehicles, like, and their supportive systems or something, only because I'm sure you also have sat with our transportation department when they've talked about all of the technology that they use, both behind the scenes and in real time on the buses and the parent, you know, like that all of those operational systems, and yes, they are delivered via technology today, but those systems are a part of the maintenance of our fleet of buses and other vehicles. They are operationally safe and efficient.
Yeah, it's kind of like 6, 7.
Yeah. All right. I know my children would push you off your chair. Operationally safe. And efficient. Operationally safe and efficient. Maintain a fleet of buses and other vehicles along with their, maintain a fleet of buses and other vehicles along with their associated systems? Is that
Jen-
too vague?
Jenna just mentioned she goes into systems that support it.
What?
Yeah, after district vehicles, you could add, maintain a replacement plan for district vehicles and associated systems.
Yeah,
And then period.
yeah. Like it. Thumbs up.
Thank you, Wordsmith Bojanowski. All right. Do you need a microphone? Okay. All right. We're going to move to 4.6. I know, we know. And now we're going to move on to 4.6.
I added one. but I've-
I got a couple I added on this one, but go
I
ahead.
have had regrets about since I wrote it in here in October. Adhere to the provisions of the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program. Those have quite unfortunately been politicized in a way that I did not think was possible when I suggested this back in October. But there are other things in these ELs when we sort of say like, hey, you got to follow the rules. And like, this is one where, you know, we have an opportunity to say, hey, you should really follow the rules. Like, it just would be consistent.
Tell me what is missing from 3? That
I I think
Nutrition?
that the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program are the funding rules. And the national school, well, I don't know, I have to go back and look. But there was, I think, the reason why I put this in here is because like one was about like what we serve and the other one was our funding, like our funding rule book. Basically like here, you know, here's sort of all the stuff you have to do in order to get reimbursed for all the food that you buy.
Those two are one and the same, like the amount of service requirements to get funded for those meals is the ingredients and the nutrition and all that stuff is strictly regulated. And because we function through that program, it's almost operating like an enterprise industry, and it's its own thing. And so they do a really good job of meeting both all the nutritional guidance and the reporting guidance so that we qualify on both ends of that. And we're audited too. And so that's one of those things that I think, unless there's something that you're wanting that's more, that's comprehensive.
I think that my original issue was that there isn't really something called like the National School Meal Program. Like there's the National School Lunch Program and there's the National School Breakfast Programs, and those are two things, and they are a thing, but there's no thing called the National School. And then same thing with like ODE's got a thing, but it's got like it's got a name.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kena.
Oh,
It's called School Nutrition Programs.
I get kids need to eat, and I really have a hard time with the like corn dog, pizza, burger, and literally, anyways, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, like,
I just want to rewrite the whole first sentence because
Yes.
it doesn't sound like you're really getting food. Personally, because think about it, offer students appealing. Okay, so most kids would say, how can I define appealing? We're prepared food that provides high nutritional value. I understand that piece. Promote physical well-being and reflect diversity. Okay. I just want to rewrite that whole sentence to mostly basically fall in line and say, hey, we're going to offer food that is allowing the students to be able to have some type of nourishment or something. I just don't like the way it's written personally, because I don't think it really talks about the value you're really trying to add with food. But additionally, I agree with the directors too, like the stuff that we are choosing, because I know my daughter would love to have this conversation with us about what's being offered every single day, and my son would too. So they're always bringing up different things they would love in terms of how is it really nutritious and how is it these things, because they would question those things that's written here. So how can we reframe or rewrite some of this to actually say what we're actually doing?
or purchase food that does fit this description.
And are we going to keep the sustainability piece in there too? Because we took it out of the other ones.
Yeah, I think, okay, so we'll take a rewrite at number 1.
Well, can you say a little bit more about like how, like, this is a funny one, because in the budget, it shows as like a $900 positive revenue. Like, it's a very weird thing, right? So.
This is over $6 million annually.
Totally, and yet, like, it's not really our 6 million. So like, just explain a little bit about how much control you feel the district really has to fully execute on like a vibes goal for how appealing and nutritious the food is. Like, do we have that power
To
like really direct, what our school lunch program looks like? Or
Yes,
are
we do.
just so at the behest of the funding systems and the supply systems that are given to us?
We absolutely do. My guess is, like, we meet all the criteria we are bound to meet. Now, whether or not students would
Well,
agree.
and go above a bit, like, we're growing our own wheat. Like,
Right.
we are already going above and beyond.
We have local partners, we have people produce, we get produce locally sourced. Like, we do a lot of really good things, and we make most of our bread products are handmade every day. And so there's lots of ways that we far exceed expectations. And so what I would tell you is we don't violate any nutritional expectations across the district because we just can't afford to. If the board were so inclined, one of the things I would tell you is this cost of $6 million is going to go up if we're going to try to exceed what we're doing, number one, and that is a choice we could make. But I would tell you that right now, we're very tickled to be a part of a national breakfast program and school lunch program in which 100% of our students that want food get food. Number one. The second thing I would tell you is that I do agree, this is a poorly written sentence, needs to be rewritten, and we'll take a run at that. The second thing is this is a major initiative in our sustainability
Yeah, I
plan,
know,
which
that's what I was
is
saying, right.
reducing food waste and reducing the argument is, well, stop using plastics, okay, and you reduce the amount in a landfill, but you're also like, then it's like, okay, we got to go do dishes, and that's hot water, and so that's energy too. And so that's why I think it deserves to have a call out in the sustainability plan,
Yes.
because it's a very strong component of the sustainability plan. And I do believe that this community values that. I can tell you our administrators and our staff care for, and our students most certainly care for sustainability as a driver for what we are going to function in. So I would tell you that generally fixing number 3 so that it's referring to the right federal program is important. Number 1, rewriting that sentence, and number 2,
Keeping the sustainability.
keeping the sustainability and honestly, those A, B, and C line up with our organizational goals, right?
Okay, right. I mean, I knew we wouldn't take out the sustainability. I'm just saying, I just mentioned it because we took it out in the other
Yeah.
ones. But I figure in this juncture, in this part, I'm just saying, I just didn't like the way the sentence was written. And that's
Yeah, I
all I'm
think it's
looking at.
poorly done too.
Here's my other thing. Only one other thing with this is this. I would love to look at one day, because we know many of the high schools, especially, a lot of students leave campus.
Yeah.
So how does that impact in terms of funding, in terms of those pieces, like versus in terms of food waste? Because we know a lot of kids, I mean, on a cold, snowy day, they may not leave, they may stay and eat lunch, but if it's a nice day, like, what are we doing? What are some of those impacts? Yeah, because I know the difference. Yeah, you can see, I could be on a high school campus, and as soon as the bell rings for lunch, I think half the school leaves, it seems like. So I'm just trying to get a feel for what that looks like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place, and I'm just gonna ask for it, if we can have some sort of presentation wrapped around the sustainability plan and how it impacts both transportation and also our, nutrition services. Yeah, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
My only comment was on 2A. It teaches appropriate nutritional behaviors. Is nutrition program teaching or are they promoting?
Modeling or promoting?
Yeah, so that would be my,
Yeah.
Director Tomlin, you good?
I'm fine on this one.
Okay, most definitely. Let's go to 4
My
points.
tiny add is that our nutrition services people are actually doing quite a bit of teaching, but yes, it's probably not the correct word.
they're not
yes.
necessarily directly teaching our students
Sure,
through the
maybe
food.
the wrong word, but they are absolutely
Oh.
supervising choices. Yep.
No,
Active participants.
yeah, which is why promoting is probably better language.
All right, we're to 4.7. Directors?
I mean, I feel like this is the one where I had the most kind of comments because technology is something that we are talking about a lot right now. And, point 6, ensure that technology implementation is researched and applies developmentally appropriate practices in K-12 education. But once it's implemented, are we ensuring that technology policies and practices are aligned with current pediatric mental health digital media guidelines? Like, that would be something I would like to see.
So like implemented and used?
And
how would you change that?
so ensuring that technology policies and practices are aligned with current pediatric and mental health digital media guidelines or recommendations. Just something along, once it's implemented, are we making sure that it's being used appropriately? Just like, I would love in here for it to say that that technology in classrooms is being solely used for educational purposes, because I really am not comfortable with practices of iPads being used for rewards or behavior management or being used for kids to play games that are not directly educationally related. And we don't have anything in here making sure that we're using technology for educational purposes.
And the piece I would love to add to some of this is training, because everyone doesn't know how to properly use every piece of technology or something we have and properly understanding of the usage and how it's related. Because when people get a new piece of technology, are they fully versed in being able to know how it actually impacts the educational process? Right? I'm always looking at those things. If I'm going to be learning something new, what is it going to allow me to be able to do, not only in my classroom as a professional development standpoint, but also how is it going to impact the students and what is it going to do in terms of our outcomes that we're looking for? So that's the key piece for me in my mind. And I hope I said that correctly, but I think that's what I'm looking at when I was thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wrote sentences down, like ensure that technology in the classroom does not harm student well-being. Requiring limits on screen time and regular communications with the board about efforts to reduce screen time, making sure that tech doesn't supersede pen and paper learning. We need something about a balance between educational technology and non-technology based educational strategies, because nothing in here has any balance like that, which I think are important things our community wants. And as a board member, I certainly want to make sure that this speaks to appropriate and responsible tech use.
And with our tech, community tech committee, I can't remember what it's called.
Stakeholder engagement.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
Would you say that group would, live up to that expectation of being aligned with physician guidance and?
Depends on who you ask.
It depends on who you ask, right? Like the parents and the mental health and medical folks in that room feel very strongly about that. I'm part of the medical side of
Yeah.
things.
I'm saying that I completely agree 100%. And if we're gonna put it in here, I wanna make sure that we're doing it.
Well, that's I think the tension right now, right? Is that there are members of the community that feel we are not doing enough, and that their voices aren't being I feel like this is really close to me, sorry. That they feel like their voices aren't necessarily being taken into acknowledgement with technology use. And when I've seen images of pornographic images on students' school iPads, and that we don't have a way to block that because it's too hard, I want something written in here that we need to make sure we're doing better, so that no student in Bend Pine is accessing pornography on district devices, which I've seen those screenshots. So I know it has happened. And my students have told me about all the ways that they can move around technology.
Well, so there's two different things there, right? Establish, and so we have number 2, adherence to common expectations for the use of technology by staff and students. Okay, so accessing porn would fall into the category of something that is outside the common expectations. So to me, what's the action here? Is it change the EL, or is it use the monitoring process of the existing EL to dig further into what's going on there?
Well, and maybe that's it. This EL is appropriate, but it's not being well managed throughout the district, right? We have JAMF as a tool, but a lot of our teachers still don't know that, right? And so that alone potentially helps solve this problem, but it's not currently being done. And every single one of us has been in a classroom and stood at the back of the classroom when the teacher's up there and seen a third of the kids not doing the work because they're playing a game. And therefore, technology is interfering with the ability to learn. So who is held accountable to that? Those are my questions, right? Because right now, I think we're failing in this EL with a lot of what I've seen in the classroom and what families are saying and what we've heard from students.
Totally hear that. So if number, okay, so then go back to your first one, which was research-based, right? So I think that number 6, what we actually mean is ensure that educational technology usage is research-based. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not really
Implementation-
worried about the bus driver software, but I am worried about like Desmos. Like,
Yeah.
this is about educational technology.
Well, and it's technology implementation and use, because that also then
That's why I
fixes
was, like,
that.
getting rid of the word implementation and changing it to something
So we need to
about.
add something about use.
Use is directed at educational goals, mental health concerns, et cetera. Some other things? Is
We're,
that
I
capturing?
think honestly, this is very simply changing one word in 6 captures what it is that you're after, and that is change implementation to use.
But I love Director Olson's comments in terms of the mental health piece and how is it impacting, right? Because we know some of the, and
I want to, can I suggest, I think there's going to be a point at which I think that I would say, for example, that the example you just gave about a third of the kids is being, that isn't always a technology issue, right? And so part of what we want to be careful with is the way this, if we change the writing to say implementation, replace that with use. Now we have technology use is research-based. It's applied developmentally and appropriate best practices in K-12 education. That sentence is irrefutable. The only way that you would attack that is if you have a specific set of criteria that you want to hold it up against that isn't being met on that. But the way it's written right now would solve that issue
Yep.
if you change that implementation to use.
Well, and also in point 2, establish and support adherence to common expectations. And with JAMF being tech that we currently have in every building, the expectation is that students aren't playing games. So it's a matter of training to that JAMF needs to be on when students are doing work in a classroom setting, right?
Correct. And I would also argue that that isn't always a technology issue.
yeah, we know that. And Director Tom, I believe you came off mute to say something, I noticed.
No, I had another thing I was gonna bring up as soon as you guys are done talking about this one.
We'll want to go ahead and add it now while we can, while we got it in the ether.
Well, just something about cybersecurity, because there's a couple of points in there that talk about safe and secure, but something that really gets to the fact that staff needs to be trained on, using technology safely so that and that cybersecurity measures are in place to protect the system, et cetera. Doesn't seem to be there.
I would tell you that think of the ELs as the outcome you want to protect. And so, for example, today we had the task force meeting and we talked about the amount of training that's going on in the district. And I can tell you, we're training a whole lot of people in this district. Doesn't always mean we're getting the desired outcome. And so I would tell you that protecting student information and staff data, as it's written in 5, does exactly what we want it to do. That's the outcome we expect. And so the way that we deliver that is to continue to train across the system on what are the cybersecure moves that we can make. And so I would tell you, if you start to incorporate training, all you're doing is devaluing the EL as a tool of accountability for the superintendent. And so, because I can tell you right now, we train every year on cybersecurity. So I'm doing exactly what you're asking me to do. But what we are seeking is that every classroom is effectively implementing JAMF, right? Those are 2 different things. Don't ask me to go train on JAMF. That's my job, to go operationalize.
we get that.
We've got the outcome on that, right? And so I would tell you, keep it written as an outcome so that you can say, why are we still struggling with this? Because protecting student data is very clear.
And as long as you think that this is set up in such a way that something like JAMF is something that should be an expectation and that you have to train on it based on this, I'm good with that. But I also want to make sure that this reflects that students should not be using technology for non-educational purposes in our school buildings. And so I want that reflected in this, and that there is accountability there. Because none of us want to walk into a classroom and just see kids on games. right? When they're in the school setting.
Agreed.
Yeah. So however this needs to be worded so that we stop seeing that and that is trained and operationalized, I'm good with.
So that is, there's nothing we can do that can make this be tomorrow for 17,000 students and 2,000 staff members. And remember, these are the high-level limitations, and we've got policies that live under each and every one of these. We have an complete cybersecurity policy, and we train on that. How often do we get emails on cybersecurity training? I mean,
Yeah.
oh gosh, more than like 2 or 3 times a week, scam of the week kinds of stuff. All of that stuff kind of happens. And so you're not going to capture that with perfect language everywhere on these, but I don't think you're going to find people disagreeing with you. The one place that that it might, the non-educational purposes is not captured in this that we may want to consider
That was the thing I was thinking.
somewhere.
Yeah, the non-education factors. Yeah.
We have work to do in this area. And I mean, Jamf's a relatively new tool, right? Like Jamf is a wonderful tool, and where it's being utilized well, it's very effective. But it's also pretty darn new.
The only thing I wanted to add, new. The only thing I want to add in terms of what Director Tatum's asking is that I know games can be used for educational purposes. We're not saying they can't be, but how are they utilized in a way that's going to be efficient? And I know that's something from an operational standpoint and working with the teachers to see what that looks like. And I know that's not something at this level that we worry about, but we do concern about when we do walk in a room. And I know it's different days of the week, and I know it's different times when we walk in. I know I get it. It depends on the circumstances. So that's the thing we're trying to look at is trying how do we minimize to make sure the students are really getting the education they deserve.
Agreed.
Well, and I think, Deschutes County Behavioral Health, they're also focusing on, like, game addiction or gambling and how that is, and so for me, it also makes me think about, like, is there a connection between the gamification and learning and the outcome being that more younger people are falling in that, like, gambling track? I mean, it's kind of like being fed to them. But that's just something that, I don't know if we haven't talked about it, but.
Well, I mean, that's the very argument when you talk to mental health, professionals, when they talk about some of our learning games that we have, Lexi and Dreambox are 2 of the big ones because it's constant. It's like the dopamine reward. You hit the button and something happens. And so, those are big issues, and this is a chance to kind of look at our high level and just say, like,
Right.
technology must be educational. And I don't think that's something that shouldn't necessarily be in here, and the intentional use of technology. And that is something that I expect, right? That technology is going to be used for educational purposes and does not replace other forms of learning.
Anything else, directors, for 4.7?
We usually, back to this number 2, where it says common expectations. So the way that this is usually communicated is an acceptable use policy. I'm imagining that we have one for students, and there's probably one for staff that can't access because I can't access the staff portal, but we do have those, right? Like, I wonder.
We do.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe that should be more clear, that this isn't about common expectations. It's like, we have to have an acceptable use policy, and we expect there to be one, and we expect to be using it.
We could change that language just so that it lines up with the way the
I
policy's
think
written.
that'd be more clear than like common expectations. And then when we want to change stuff, what we change is what the acceptable use policy is. Yeah, which does not include YouTube, Minecraft, play-by-play.
Norm well, okay. 4.8, we're on 8, 4.8, executive limitations on communication.
No notes.
I have notes in my head. I just want to be sure that we make it very clear that it is our job to communicate not only district staff, students, and families, but the whole damn community. And somehow that needs to be clearly in here, whether it's a couple of bullet points underneath the general statement or something. But the transparency issue and the information and the responsibility to taxpayers, the responsibility for us to communicate directly with the community.
So is it just adding districts, staff, students, families, and community at large, or?
Well, sort of, but I'd like to have it be a little more specific, like through, we have some.
Like
have
how
some
we
throughs,
communicate.
Yes,
Okay.
or, yeah, I want to set timelines. I mean, I want to say we have to have a monthly something. But I do want to say that it is our responsibility to ensure the community has current and,
Yeah, no, I like that.
something or other
District
information
provides
about
for
district.
regular internal and external communications, maybe is regular enough,
Regular's pretty good, yeah.
to inform the board of directors, district staff, students, families, and the community as a whole of the district vision, goals, initiatives, programs, events, and opportunities.
Yeah,
Oh, and then-
no, it does. This includes district communications
the
that
regular
occur
basis,
on a
yeah.
regular basis in
Regular
forms that are accessible and coherent,
Yeah,
with the
maybe we take
objective
out
of
the-
promoting transparency, understanding, and engagement among all district stakeholders. So I'm curious as to who you feel like that's not capturing.
I think it's that first sentence, though, I think she's right. Like, if we're gonna list out all these parties, the community's a party.
Yeah, so students, families.
Yeah, and district stakeholders doesn't necessarily mean the general community to me. District stakeholders.
Can be
I guess-
partners.
She's right. Janet's right. We changed, if you go back to October, we
Mm-hmm.
did this. We went group by group by group by
Yeah.
group. And let's make sure that we just mirror that language
Yeah,
in
okay.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
Thanks. Good
Thank
I
you,
just want to
Janet.
be really clear on that.
Thank you, Janet, for remembering.
Language.
Yeah.
Any additional information?
Thank you,
Miss-
Janet.
Yes, go ahead,
think
Director Tomlin.
The only thing that seemed to be missing here was the fact that we need two-way communication, right? And that we should be listening as well as communicating to these groups. So that
Yes.
two-way
Promoting
dialogue.
transparency, understanding,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like the
And
two-way.
That
well,
word listening
engagement.
is really important.
and engagement. Okay. Mhm. Scott, and engagement in that last sentence, Ross. Does that help?
Well, it does, but it doesn't really, come clear that, we need to be listening to what they think as well as telling them what's going on.
Yep, especially down the line if we ever ask them for funds again.
Yeah, but through various channels. I was just trying to, how do you write that in a way that, like anytime you say engagement among all district stakeholders, whew, that's a lot of listening sessions, right?
Yes, it is.
I think it's important that we capture the intent that, and not just capture it, I mean, we do this, right? Like, our goal is to go out and get stakeholder feedback, right? Like, we do this with pushing out policy changes, all those kinds of things, and provide opportunities. In the last bond campaign, I think we did 52 informational sessions. Anywhere anybody would have us, we would go. And so I think that idea of two-way communication is important. I want us to be mindful that we don't set it up as, well, this says engagement with all stakeholders.
Any additional comments on 4.8? All right, directors, we're going to 4.9.
So, I'm curious if this is a space to also mention that, that the superintendent of the district does not, collude or work with, federal agencies. I don't know if you necessarily need to call out ICE, but I think it is important to put it somewhere in here. That's all I'll say right now.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say, Keena, because I don't necessarily disagree, but this is also a document that should withstand the current situation that we're in.
Right.
And, you know, we have in here the procedures to address the sharing of information with partner agencies in accordance with applicable state and federal laws. So that to me seems like it kind of covers us, because obviously as a district, we have to apply, you know, comply with law, if that, even if that law changes and we don't agree with it.
Yeah, what AR is it? What AR is it?
Let's use an, I don't want to use it.
This is a tough.
We will always follow policy, and we will always follow statute. There are conditions in which we would have to follow federal law, and we would have to.
You know, it was during COVID, right? There were people who wanted school districts to not follow masking requirements and boards who disagreed with it. But if you went against it, you lost all your funding, right? And so people made decisions that they didn't necessarily agree with because it was the law. And that's not to say that it's always the right thing to follow the law, right? Ethically. But we still are obligated as a body to follow the law.
There are things that are out of our control that we can't. Right. God, this feels great.
I know it's the hardest thing because it's written and unwritten at the same time to a certain extent. correct?
Well, and I think we talk about this a lot, especially now, and I just sent an email to a parent who is like, are we okay? You know, are we doing what we need to be doing, and are our staff trained, and do they know, and do they understand? And they wanted reassurance. And I told them that we train at bus stops. We train our office staff. We know exactly where we would need to comply and where we wouldn't, if you will, and we train to that. And that's what, quite frankly, districts across the country are doing right now. And there would be, and I can't speak to it if it were to have happened in a district. I do not know that it has happened currently, because there has been, they did remove churches and schools from protected sites, and so that created some fear.
Yes, we do.
I will tell you that right now, we are very clear on what we have the right to do and how we train that. And it's captured in this document in a way that is very broad, and it's most certainly captured in statute, Oregon statute, and it's also captured in our policies right now. And so,
And when the Supreme Court basically shook their responsibilities to uphold 14, 10, and 4 when it comes to those constitutional rights, it's unfortunate that's where the state that we're in, and it's put us in this situation. But at the same time, like we're stating, we have to adhere by the law, but at the same time too, we know there's protections that we have for our families, our staff, administrators, students, so forth and so on, to make sure that they're protected. And we know that's there. But like you said, if we add too much language, you can get to a point where it may open us up for certain things from my perspective. But at the same time too, we still want to make sure that we have language in here that is doing everything we can to protect everyone and make them feel safe when they're in our schools. So,
one thing I would recommend in number 1, I would recommend that we change the 4th word so that we do not provide security anywhere in our schools. It is a goal, an outcome that is regarded around safety, and a sense of safety, and safety is what we focus on, not security. And so I would recommend that we remove security in both areas, 1 and 4.
In 4, if we remove security, just the needs of district facilities, not anything replacing security?
Safety.
Safety, okay,
yeah.
that's,
So the second sentence says safety and security are priorities of the district.
Yeah. Security, I would say, is I believe that when this was written, it was talking about trying to get this idea of having secure vestibules. And we're beyond that now. And so now we have a comprehensive safety approach that includes locked doors and secure vestibules and so much more. And so that's why I believe safety is a more appropriate connotation than security.
So you're saying in one, instead of using security, how do we say, like you're just saying secure vestibules, but how do we say secure space in a way that is? Okay. Okay, got you. I understand. Thank you. Thanks for the clarity.
Yeah.
And safe is broader, right? So like in that second paragraph, shall not fail to provide for a safe and secure learning and working environment. That is still captured by saying provide for a safe learning and working environment. Secure implies every door that's in the building is
But it
locked.
also implies a stewardship of taxpayer-funded facilities. We don't leave our doors open. We don't let people steal our computers. Like, there are things that we take responsibility for that are our physical property above and beyond, what we mean when we say student security. But the security of our assets is important.
Sure. But I would tell you that there are many people who believe things like secure means metal detectors and. Right, well, arguably, asset security is about ensuring that we're properly insured, yeah. Making sure that we are fiscally responsible for the assets of the community and of the district and keeping them upgraded. And that's like more aligned with our Moody's rating than I would say even our facilities.
I was gonna say, so security in that context is in a different EL, not the safety EL.
In the facilities.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I just need someone to like talk me through this because, Jim Crow was legal. And so are we gonna do that? Are we just gonna be like?
Here's the example. A judicial warrant
Yes.
carries the
So
fact.
can you just say judicial warrant in here?
Or should this be in the AR? Like, is this not the place to do this? Is it in our AR about?
That's what
our
I was
Yes.
thinking,
It's-
right? That's what I
it's
was
not-
thinking, right?
It's in
It's
our
not-
training manuals, right? Like the very first, like there are many types of warrants and we are statewide, we are training about what is a civil warrant, what is a judicial warrant, we're working with our partners in the community. This is not just a Ben Lapine Schools thing. This is all over the region and all over the state, is making sure that people know and understand what their rights truly are. The idea of saying that we wouldn't follow this one, but we would follow this is part of the challenge right now. And so I think if a judicial warrant were issued, I don't think this has been done in any of the 12,000 districts in this country. But if it were to be done, it would be the front page of just about every paper in the country. Here, hold this. I want to make sure you say that.
So KNAR specifically says, at no time will a student be released to law enforcement officer without one of the following: a warrant, a court order, arrest, a protective custody resulting from child abuse investigation, or permission of the parent guardian.
Right, and the Oregon sanctuary law, according to OSBA, goes even further. So
Yep.
we don't get involved at all. That's about students. Like, law says, we do not help with the enforcement of federal civil immigration law, except in the presence of a warrant. So that to me includes way more than students. That's like, we don't do anything.
So I guess I'm like, why don't we say that instead of 3? Or do we even need?
Because 3 is broader and these
It's
want to
just
be broad.
broader.
right?
This exists, those protections exist in our policies already,
Okay,
and they only get changed if you or we decide that,
okay.
Better.
and we are actually very pleased with where the state laws hit on this right now, because it has taken a lot of the heat.
Yes, it has. I'm glad we have this thing with it. Any additional words we want to look at or any other pieces? All right. I think,
Should we put any information in there about safety drills and staff training of these
was that an
things?
AR? That's
Or
an
is it-
AR.
More in the AR?
That's correct. Thanks for bringing that up, Ross. That's one of the pieces that we had in 4.2. If you recall, 4.2 was about some of our HR policies. And part of what we were trying to do, after we reviewed it with you all, we had a conversation in which we've actually got some disconnects, that some of 4.2 needs to be moved to safety. And so we're going to pull those, and we're going to add the wellness. And you'll see that language. We'll make sure it's highlighted so that it's clear what we've taken the liberty to do after you all have already reviewed it. But that's the idea of wellness being a part of our staff wellness, right? Living in an EL should be something that should sustain superintendents and boards. That should be a priority. You know, this idea of being an employer of choice because we're so clear with what expectations are and we're transparent and we have lots of supports in how we support our employees. That should be a goal regardless of who's in charge, whether it's this board or another board. And so that's what we're going to recommend, and we'll pull those different, those two, I think there's two separate pieces that were in 4.2 that we felt like belonged here, and clarifying 4.2 as not only is this HR's report, if you will, but where does staff well-being belong in that report? Because right now, if you recall, in our org goals, we've incorporated it with part of 3.3, and I think it does fit better under 4.2.
all right, directors, any additional comments for 4.9? All right, so it's going to move on to the next part of our agenda. Well, first, thank you for all this hard work on this tonight. Thank you, Board Clerk Jana Wojnowski and Superintendent. Thank you, Ross, for being here tonight as well. And we're going to go now to director comments and open up to the floor to all the directors. Oh, and quick reminder, the applications for the Budget Committee vacancy are due this Friday, January 30th. So if people are interested in being a part of the Budget Committee, please make sure to get those things in to us as soon as possible. And I'm going to start with Director Tomlin online. For any director,
No comments tonight. I'm glad we got through all this. That's good. Good
thank
work.
you for your presence. Appreciate it. Director Lynch.
No comments tonight.
Thank you very much. Director Chadwick.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Director Olson.
Yeah, I'd just like to call out a couple of visitations in the last couple of weeks. One was some of the district office staff and principals visited the Bethlehem Inn. And it was focused on the family units and what they do and what they can't do and what they won't do for families and what our involvement is. But it was very nice. It was super. We got to walk through one of the rooms for families because they have one vacant out of the 10. The other thing was the New Choice High School presentations. I understand the first one was standing room only at Ben Tech. I went to the second one and it was still probably 60 people there. And Lakeisha and Zach did a great job and the kids talked about the programs, you know, it was super. And there were a lot of parents and a lot of kids. So that 60 was kind of a mixture. There were a few parents whose kids are already in one of those programs, but not too many. So it was exploratory, definitely. And I asked if we were going to have a contest to name the New Choice High School.
Thank you, Director Olson. Director Tatum?
No comment.
All right, I'm gonna conclude tonight with my favorite part of the year. Y'all know how I feel about Black History Month. It's always coming up next month, and it's something that I'm always willing to celebrate. I really can't wait to hopefully see many of you and people in the community at some of the events, because remember, Black History Month is American history, and you can learn a few things about the many vast things that African Americans have contributed to this, not only this country, but to the world. And the one quote I want to leave y'all with tonight, and for us to think about, and I'll probably revisit this when I come back after being, I probably won't be at next meeting. I'm just letting y'all know off the top, be transparent. The one thing I want everyone to think about going forward, not just this year, but any work that we're doing in the district, is this: how does your purpose align with the goals? I want to make sure I say this correctly. Hold on. Yeah, how does your purpose align with the goals of the services that we provide in this community? What is your purpose and how does it align? So that's the one thing I want everybody to think about going forward in terms of how we educate our students, how do we work with our families and constituents, and how do we work with the many partners that we work with? So how does your purpose align with all those different things that we're trying to achieve? And I want to make sure we can be clear on what that looks like. Our next meeting, actual general board meeting, will be on February 10th. That will be led by Vice Chair Director Amy Tatum, and can't wait to hear how that went. Looking forward to seeing y'all. This meeting is adjourned.